When the body goes silent, the soul begins to whisper truths that the noise of daily indulgence has always drowned out. Abstinence in its many forms, whether from food, from certain pleasures, or from the constant stimulation of the senses, is not a punishment, but a discipline. It is the art of stepping back, of closing the gates to the endless flood of desire, so that the river within can become still and clear. Most people think that self-denial is about loss, about depriving oneself of joy, but this is a misunderstanding born from a life that has never tasted the quiet sweetness of inner freedom. In abstinence, you are not losing, you are creating space. You are not weakening yourself, you are training your spirit to stand without crutches. When you deliberately silence the needs of the body, something remarkable happens. The deeper, quieter parts of you awaken. Your thoughts grow sharper, your emotions become clearer, and your connection to your own purpose strengthens like a blade honed on stone. The silence of the body is not emptiness. It is the canvas upon which the soul paints its truest colors. But make no mistake, the process is not comfortable. The first silence feels heavy. The first withdrawal feels like a struggle against yourself. Yet with each passing moment, the noise fades, the hunger transforms, and you begin to hear what was always there, the steady, unshakable voice of the soul guiding you toward a higher life. That is the truth behind abstinence, not denial of life, but the rediscovery of its deepest essence. Most people hear the word abstinence and immediately think of restriction, of a tight and joyless life where pleasures are forbidden and the natural impulses of the body are treated like enemies. But that is because they see it only from the surface, from the perspective of one who has never tasted its deeper rewards. Abstinence, in truth, is not about deprivation. It is about liberation. It is the conscious choice to step back from the constant pull of the senses, not because life's pleasures are inherently bad, but because you recognize that when they rule you, you are not free. Imagine a person who cannot go a single day without a certain comfort, a certain taste, a certain habit. They may believe they are simply enjoying life, but in reality, their joy is conditional, chained to that habit. Their happiness, their peace, even their sense of identity is subtly dependent on something outside themselves. This is not freedom. It is a soft form of captivity. Abstinence is the art of breaking those chains, not by force or repression, but by choosing to set aside what you have come to believe you need, and discovering that you can stand without it. In the beginning, this path feels difficult. The body protests, the mind invents excuses, and 1,000 justifications appear for why you should return to your old patterns. This is the first test, whether you can endure the initial discomfort without surrendering. In those early days, abstinence may feel like a battle against yourself, as if you are tearing away something essential. But the truth is that you are only tearing away illusion. You are peeling back the layers of dependency that have wrapped themselves around your life. Each craving that arises is an opportunity to see the invisible strings that have been controlling your behavior, and each time you choose not to obey, you loosen those strings a little more. Over time, something extraordinary begins to happen. You realize you are no longer driven purely by impulse. You discover a deeper calm, a steadier focus, and an inner authority that was always there, but hidden under the noise of constant gratification. Think of the mind as a lake. When desires are constantly stirred, the surface is turbulent, reflecting nothing clearly. Every craving is like a stone thrown into the water, sending ripples that distort the image of who you truly are. Abstinence is the act of stopping the hand that throws the stones. At first, the water remains unsettled from the storms of the past, but if you wait, if you persist, the surface becomes still. In that stillness, you see your reflection without distortion. This is inner clarity, and it is one of the greatest gifts abstinence offers. Without the constant noise of bodily demands, you can hear your own thoughts more clearly, feel your own emotions more precisely, and see your life with sharper vision. Many people do not realize how clouded their perception becomes when they are always giving in to the next impulse. They live in a haze, unaware that their mind is not truly their own. Abstinence cuts through that haze like a blade, revealing the landscape of the self in its true form. It is also important to understand that abstinence is not about punishing the body. The body is not the enemy, it is a vessel, a home, and a companion on the journey of life. But like any strong companion, it needs guidance. Left unchecked, its desires can consume your attention and pull you away from higher purposes. In this way, abstinence is an act of respect, respect for the body's power and for the soul's need to lead. By choosing when and how to fulfill your bodily desires, you are asserting that you are more than the sum of your appetites. You are teaching the body that it serves you, not the other way around. This is a subtle but powerful shift, because when you are in command of your desires, you can enjoy them without being enslaved by them. One of the most misunderstood aspects of abstinence is the idea that it reduces joy. In truth, it deepens joy. Think of a person who eats their favorite food every day. At first, they may enjoy it intensely, but over time, the pleasure dulls. The flavor becomes familiar, and the excitement fades. But if that same person abstains for a time, the first taste after returning feels vivid, rich, and alive again. Abstinence restores appreciation by reminding you that pleasures are not owed to you. They are gifts, to be savored when the moment is right. This principle applies not only to food, but to all experiences, from entertainment to intimacy to the simple act of resting. The less you take something for granted, the more you value it when it comes. Abstinence also strengthens a quality that is increasingly rare in our age: patience. In a world where everything is available instantly, we have forgotten the power of waiting. Patience is not simply the ability to delay gratification. It is the ability to remain at peace while you wait. When you practice abstinence, you train this ability. You learn to exist without immediately satisfying every want, and in doing so you gain control over your own emotional state. You no longer live in the tyranny of, "I need this now." Instead, you move through life with the calm assurance that you can face discomfort, hunger, or longing without losing yourself. Another transformation that abstinence brings is the awakening of willpower. Willpower is like a muscle. If you never use it, it becomes weak, but if you challenge it, it grows strong. Every time you choose abstinence, you are exercising this muscle. Over time, your ability to make difficult choices in all areas of life improves. You become the kind of person who can commit to a goal and see it through, who can resist temptations that would have once derailed you, and who can act according to values rather than impulses. This strength of will extends far beyond the practice of abstinence itself. It influences your work, your relationships, your health, and your ability to pursue your dreams without being swayed by momentary distractions. Ultimately, abstinence is about mastery, not mastery over the world or over others, but mastery over yourself. It is the recognition that your greatest battles are not fought against external forces, but within your own heart and mind. When you choose abstinence, you are stepping onto the path of self-discipline, a path that leads to clarity, freedom, and purpose. You are saying to yourself, "I am willing to endure discomfort for the sake of something greater." And in that willingness lies your true power. For the person who can control their own desires is not at the mercy of the world. They can walk through life with a steady gaze, an unshakable mind, and a soul that speaks with the authority of one who is truly free. If you look closely, you will see that many of the wisest figures in history, spiritual teachers, philosophers, warriors, have practiced some form of abstinence. They understood that to gain control over one's mind, one must first gain control over one's appetites. They did not do this because they hated pleasure, but because they valued truth more. The truth that you are not merely a collection of wants, the truth that your soul's voice can only be heard when the body's noise quiets, the truth that freedom is not the ability to do whatever you want, but the ability to not be controlled by what you want. This is why abstinence is not deprivation. It is the key to a deeper, stronger, and more meaningful life. It strips away the illusion that joy comes from constant indulgence, and reveals that real joy comes from living in harmony with your highest self. When you silence the body's constant cravings, something profound begins to take place. A voice you may have never truly heard starts to emerge from within. This voice is not loud or demanding like the body's urges. It is quiet, steady, and deeply truthful. The body speaks in hunger, in thirst, in impulses, and in the restless search for comfort. It asks for satisfaction in the form of food, pleasure, distraction, and ease. But the soul does not speak this way. The soul's language is subtle, felt more than heard. and it only becomes clear when the clamor of the body subsides. Most people live their entire lives without hearing it, because their days are filled with constant feeding. Feeding the senses, feeding the emotions, feeding the ego. Every empty moment is quickly filled with stimulation, leaving no space for the soul to be heard. When you practice abstinence, you are creating that space. You are reducing the noise of bodily demands until it is quiet enough for the deeper parts of you to rise to the surface. The first thing many people notice when they silence the body's cravings is an increased awareness of their thoughts. In normal life, the mind is often clouded by the fluctuations of the body. Hunger makes you irritable, desire makes you impatient, comfort makes you sluggish. But when you set aside those cravings for a time, you see your thoughts more clearly. You notice patterns that were hidden before. How much of your mental activity is driven by the pursuit of physical satisfaction, and how much energy is spent simply maintaining a state of comfort. When these patterns become visible, you begin to understand yourself in a deeper way. You realize that you are not simply reacting to life, but often reacting to the body's moment-to-moment state. And as this understanding grows, so does your ability to choose your responses rather than being driven by instinct. The next shift comes in emotional clarity. Physical cravings do not only cloud the mind, they also cloud the heart. Many emotional states, anxiety, boredom, loneliness, are disguised by the constant pursuit of bodily pleasure. You may eat not because you are hungry, but because you are seeking comfort. You may scroll endlessly on your phone, not because you truly want the information, but because you are avoiding a feeling you do not want to face. When you silence the body's cravings, you remove these distractions, and the feelings beneath them rise to the surface. At first, this can be uncomfortable. You might discover sadness you didn't know you carried, or a restlessness that was always there, but covered by constant stimulation. Yet this discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is a sign of progress. You are meeting yourself as you truly are, without the protective layer of bodily indulgence. As the body quiets further, something remarkable happens. Your perception begins to sharpen. Without the constant pull of cravings, your senses are no longer dulled by overuse. You begin to notice the world in greater detail. The taste of plain water becomes refreshing in a way you never realized. The sound of the wind, the rhythm of your own breath, the warmth of sunlight on your skin, these small things become vivid again. This is one of the paradoxes of abstinence. By reducing physical indulgence, you heighten physical appreciation. The soul speaks not only in abstract truths, but also in the quiet joy of being fully present in the simplest experiences. Over time, this presence deepens into insight. When the body is no longer in control, the soul can guide your attention to what truly matters. You begin to reflect on your life with greater honesty. You may see where you have been chasing empty goals, or where you have been avoiding necessary changes. You may recognize truths about your relationships, your work, or your habits that were always there, but buried under the noise of constant consumption. These realizations are often uncomfortable at first, because the soul does not flatter you. It tells you what is real. But it is in facing these truths that transformation begins. The soul's voice is not interested in temporary comfort. It is interested in your highest good. This is why silencing the body's cravings is so powerful. It creates the conditions for truth to surface. Without this silence, you might live decades in a comfortable fog, never realizing that the life you are living is smaller than the one you were meant for. With it, you see not only the truth about yourself, but also the truth about the world. You begin to notice how much of society is built on feeding cravings, advertising that plays on your insecurities, entertainment that distracts you from inner emptiness, products that promise happiness, but deliver only momentary satisfaction. When you no longer live under the control of those cravings, you see through these illusions. You become harder to manipulate, because you are no longer ruled by the same impulses that these systems depend on. As the body quiets and the soul's voice strengthens, another transformation occurs. You begin to feel a deeper sense of connection. The constant pursuit of bodily satisfaction often keeps us locked in ourselves, focused on my hunger, my comfort, my pleasure. But when those demands are set aside, space opens for empathy and awareness of others. You notice the needs, feelings, and unspoken struggles of people around you. You sense your place in a larger whole, and you begin to act not only for your own comfort, but for the benefit of others. This is not a forced morality. It is a natural expansion of the heart that occurs when the noise of self-centered craving fades away. The soul's voice also carries a certain strength, an inner authority that does not come from ego, but from alignment. When you listen to it, your decisions become clearer and your actions more purposeful. You stop wasting energy on things that do not matter, and you find the courage to walk away from what no longer serves your growth. You are less reactive, less easily swayed by temptation or pressure, because you are guided by something deeper than impulse. This is not a sudden change, but a gradual unfolding, a slow replacing of restlessness with steadiness. And the more you listen, the more the soul speaks, leading you into a life that feels both more grounded and more meaningful. It is important to remember that the soul has always been speaking. You simply could not hear it over the noise. Abstinence is not about creating the soul's voice. It is about uncovering it. It is like tuning a radio that has been drowned out by static for years. As you practice silencing the cravings of the body, the static fades, and the signal becomes clearer. You realize that the guidance you were searching for outside yourself was always within you, waiting for your attention. And when you begin to live according to that guidance, life takes on a different texture, not necessarily easier, but richer, more real, and far more aligned with who you truly are. This is the truth behind the idea that silencing the body allows the soul to speak. It is not mystical in the sense of being unreachable. It is a practical, lived experience available to anyone willing to step away from constant gratification. But it requires courage, because to hear the soul, you must be willing to face what it tells you, even when it challenges the life you have built. If you can do this, if you can endure the initial discomfort and resist the pull of old habits, you will find that the voice within you is not just a whisper. It is a compass, steady and unwavering, pointing you toward the life you were meant to live. Self-denial has long been misunderstood as a rigid, joyless way of living, but in reality, it is one of the most powerful tools for building discipline, focus, and heightened awareness. When you intentionally hold yourself back from certain pleasures or comforts, you are not harming yourself, you are sharpening yourself. The human mind and body are designed to adapt to challenges, but in a world of instant gratification, we have removed many of those challenges, and in doing so, we have weakened one of the greatest strengths we can develop, self-control. Self-denial is the deliberate act of saying no to something you want, not because it is bad, but because the act of restraint itself transforms you. It is the conscious choice to value long-term growth over short-term satisfaction. And this choice builds a kind of inner muscle that influences every area of your life. In the beginning, practicing self-denial feels like a fight. The body complains, the mind invents reasons to give in, and you may even question whether it is worth the effort. But each moment you resist is a moment of growth. Just as physical muscles grow through resistance, your willpower grows through moments of saying no, when it would be easier to say yes. Over time, this repeated act of restraint strengthens your discipline. Discipline is not about forcing yourself to do things through sheer will alone. It is about creating a mental environment where your higher goals take priority over passing desires. Self-denial trains you to make decisions from that place of higher clarity. Alongside discipline comes focus. When you deny yourself certain pleasures, you remove distractions that often pull your attention in many directions. Most of the time, we don't realize how much of our mental energy is spent thinking about satisfying the next craving, what to eat, what to watch, what to buy, where to go for entertainment. When you step away from those constant indulgences, your mind begins to settle, and you find that you have more energy to concentrate on what truly matters. Tasks that once seemed overwhelming become manageable, because you are no longer dividing your attention between your work and your desires. Self-denial teaches you to channel your energy into one direction at a time, and in that focus, you find efficiency and clarity. Heightened awareness is another gift of this practice. When you are constantly indulging, your senses become dulled. The joy of any single experience is reduced because you are always seeking the next one. But when you practice restraint, You begin to notice subtleties you once overlooked. Food tastes richer after a fast, the air feels fresher after hours indoors, and the smallest acts of kindness from others feel deeply meaningful. Self-denial resets your baseline for appreciation. It sharpens your senses and allows you to experience life more vividly. This heightened awareness is not just about physical sensations. It also applies to your inner world. You become more aware of your thoughts, your emotions, and the patterns that govern your behavior. One of the most profound shifts that comes from self-denial is the ability to separate need from want. In modern life, these two often become tangled. You might think you need something when in reality, you simply want it because you are used to having it. This confusion creates dependency. Self-denial untangles the two by showing you what is truly essential. When you abstain from something and realize that you can still function, perhaps even better without it, you free yourself from its hold. This realization is empowering because it means that fewer external factors control your happiness or stability. You learn that you can be content with less, and this freedom reduces fear, anxiety, and the constant chase for more. The practice of self-denial also builds resilience. Life will inevitably place you in situations where you cannot get what you want immediately, or at all. Without training in restraint, these moments can feel unbearable, leading to frustration, stress, or poor decision-making. But when you have practiced self-denial intentionally, you have already trained your mind and body to handle such moments. You know how to live with discomfort without letting it control you. This resilience allows you to remain calm and effective in challenging circumstances, whether they are in your personal life, your career, or your relationships. Another transformation that emerges from self-denial is the deepening of self-respect. When you make a commitment to yourself and honor it, even when it is difficult, you prove to yourself that your word has value. Many people struggle with self-doubt because they have repeatedly broken promises to themselves, giving in to temptations and failing to follow through on goals. Each act of self-denial is a small promise kept, and over time, these build into a strong sense of trust in yourself. You begin to believe not only that you can set goals, but that you can achieve them because you have evidence of your own consistency. This self-trust becomes a foundation for greater achievements. Self-denial also strips away illusions. When you are constantly indulging, you may believe that happiness depends on certain pleasures, but when you step back, you begin to see how temporary and shallow those pleasures can be. This does not mean you stop enjoying them. It means you stop relying on them to feel whole. You start to see that true contentment comes from within, and external pleasures are simply enhancements, not necessities. This perspective is liberating because it makes you less vulnerable to the ups and downs of circumstance. One of the greatest benefits of self-denial is the alignment it creates between your actions and your values. When you deny yourself something, it is often because you have decided that another priority matters more. Perhaps you skip a night out to work toward a long-term project, or you fast for spiritual reasons, or you resist buying something to save for a bigger goal. Each act of self-denial is a declaration. I value this more than I value immediate comfort. Over time, these choices create a life that is more consistent with your deepest principles. You are no longer living reactively, chasing whatever feels good in the moment. You are living intentionally, building a future that reflects who you truly are. Self-denial is also a form of training for freedom. This might sound paradoxical. How can denying yourself be a path to freedom? But consider the opposite. If you cannot say no to a craving, then you are not free. You are under the control of whatever desire appears in the moment. True freedom is the ability to choose, not just the ability to indulge. When you can say no when you want to, you can also say yes with greater intention. You reclaim the power to decide, rather than being carried away by impulse. In the end, self-denial is not about rejecting life's pleasures, but about reclaiming your authority over them. It is a process of clearing the noise, so you can hear your own priorities clearly, of sharpening your focus so you can direct your energy effectively, and of heightening your awareness so you can experience life with greater depth. Through discipline, focus, and awareness, self-denial transforms you from a person who is shaped by desires into a person who shapes desires. It allows you to live with a clear mind, a steady heart, and a strong will, qualities that lead not only to personal success, but to a life of meaning and inner peace. The discomfort of restraint is one of the most underestimated forces for personal transformation. Most people avoid discomfort instinctively, seeking comfort at every turn, and in doing so they miss one of life's greatest teachers. When you practice abstinence or self-denial, the first thing you encounter is resistance, not from the outside world, but from within yourself. The body sends signals urging you to give in: hunger pangs, restlessness, irritability, fatigue. The mind adds its own pressure with persuasive thoughts, reminding you of how easy it would be to return to your old habits. This is the point where many people quit, convinced that the discomfort they feel is a sign that something is wrong. But in truth, this discomfort is the gateway to deeper self-mastery. It is not a sign of failure. It is the very terrain you must cross to grow. In our modern world, we are conditioned to view discomfort as a problem that must be fixed immediately. If we are hungry, we eat. If we are bored, we seek entertainment. If we are stressed, we distract ourselves. While there is nothing inherently wrong with satisfying needs, the constant avoidance of discomfort means we never develop the capacity to endure it. And without that capacity, our lives are ruled by the fear of anything that feels unpleasant. Restraint reverses this conditioning. By willingly stepping into discomfort, we learn that it is not an enemy, but a signal, an opportunity to strengthen the mind's ability to lead the body instead of being dragged by it. The first stage of this process is learning to sit with discomfort without reacting. This is more difficult than it sounds. The body and mind are wired to seek relief, and when you do not provide it, they rebel. You might find your thoughts obsessing over the thing you have denied yourself. Your emotions may flare up, making you feel impatient or frustrated. But if you can observe these reactions without giving in, you begin to realize something important. The discomfort does not last forever. It rises, peaks, and eventually begins to fade. This understanding is a breakthrough because it shows you that feelings of craving, frustration, or even pain are temporary waves, not permanent conditions. As you practice restraint, another realization emerges. You are stronger than you thought. Many people underestimate their own capacity for endurance. They believe they cannot go without certain comforts or pleasures. But in reality, their limits are far beyond what they imagine. Discomfort reveals these hidden reserves of strength. Every time you choose to endure instead of escape, you expand the boundaries of what you can handle. This growth is subtle at first, but over time, it changes your self-image. You no longer see yourself as fragile or dependent. You begin to see yourself as resilient, adaptable, and capable. The discomfort of restraint also exposes the depth of your attachments. When you remove something from your life, you quickly see how much of your identity, mood, and sense of stability was tied to it. This can be a humbling experience. You might discover that what you thought was just a preference is actually a dependency. It is not pleasant to face this truth, but it is liberating. Once you recognize an attachment, you have the power to loosen it. You learn to relate to that thing, whether it is a type of food, a habit, or a source of entertainment, from a position of choice rather than need. Over time, what once felt like deprivation begins to feel like empowerment. At first, restraint can feel like you are taking something away from yourself. But as your perspective shifts, you start to see that you are not losing, you are gaining. You are gaining self-control, clarity, and the ability to decide your actions based on values rather than impulses. The discomfort becomes a form of training. Just as a muscle grows stronger through resistance, the mind grows stronger through challenge. The very sensations that once made you want to quit become signals that you are in the process of growth. The practice of enduring discomfort also rewires your relationship with pleasure. When you constantly satisfy your cravings, pleasure becomes dull. The mind adapts quickly to constant indulgence, and what once excited you becomes ordinary. By practicing restraint, you allow pleasure to regain its intensity. A simple meal tastes extraordinary after a fast. Rest feels deeply restorative after hard work. Discomfort heightens appreciation by teaching you that pleasure is most meaningful when it is earned and not taken for granted. Perhaps one of the most valuable lessons in this process is the ability to make decisions without being controlled by immediate feelings. Discomfort often pushes people into rash choices. They eat what they don't need, spend money they can't afford, or say things they later regret simply to escape an unpleasant feeling in the moment. But when you practice restraint, you learn to act even when your emotions are uncomfortable. You develop the ability to stick to your commitments regardless of your current mood, and this consistency is the foundation of real self-mastery. There is also a spiritual dimension to this. Many traditions across the world, whether religious, philosophical, or martial, include practices of restraint and endurance. Fasting, silent retreats, rigorous training, and other forms of discipline are not simply about physical limits. They are about meeting the deeper self beyond those limits. Discomfort strips away the distractions and defenses we use to avoid facing who we really are. When you are stripped of comfort, you see your fears, your doubts, and your desires more clearly. You also see your strength, your patience, and your capacity for peace. In this way, discomfort becomes a teacher, revealing truths that comfort would keep hidden. Another hidden benefit of embracing discomfort is the way it prepares you for life's unpredictability. No matter how much we try to control our circumstances, life will bring moments of loss, hardship, and uncertainty. If you have never trained yourself to endure discomfort, such moments can feel overwhelming. But if you have already practiced restraint, you know how to face these situations with composure. You have experienced what it means to live without certain comforts, and you know it is possible to remain stable and focused even when things are not easy. This preparedness turns discomfort from something to be feared into something you can handle with confidence. Ultimately, the discomfort of restraint teaches you one of life's most empowering truths. You do not need to feel good to do good. You can keep moving toward your goals, uphold your values, and live with integrity even when the path is difficult. This is the essence of self-mastery, the ability to choose your actions based on what is right, not just on what is pleasant. The more you practice, the more you realize that comfort is not the highest aim in life. Growth, purpose, and truth are worth far more, and they are often found on the other side of discomfort. When you come to see discomfort as a guide rather than an obstacle, your relationship with it changes forever. You stop running from it, and instead, you walk into it willingly, knowing that every step you take through it is shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and freer. What once felt unbearable becomes a familiar and even welcome sign that you are on the right path. The discomfort of restraint is not punishment. It is proof that you are choosing growth over stagnation, mastery over dependence, and truth over illusion. And when you learn to embrace it, there is no part of life you cannot face with courage and clarity. There is a certain kind of personal power that does not come from what you say, but from the way you carry yourself, the choices you make, and the silent rules you follow in your own mind. One of the most overlooked yet deeply transformative of these rules is the decision to never explain yourself unnecessarily. This does not mean you become rude, dismissive, or arrogant. It means you understand that your life is not a courtroom where you must present evidence for every choice you make. Many people live with a constant fear of being misunderstood, judged, or disliked, so they overcompensate by pouring out explanations, justifications, and backstories to make sure others approve. But in doing so, they give away two valuable resources: their energy and their authority. The more you explain, the more you invite others to pick apart your reasoning, challenge your intentions, or subtly influence your decisions. This creates a dynamic where your self-worth becomes tied to whether your explanation is accepted, rather than whether your choice is right for you. The truth is, you owe explanations only to a very small circle, those directly affected by your decision, or those you trust enough to share your reasoning with. Everyone else may not even care as much as you think, and if they do, their curiosity does not obligate you to feed it. Powerful people understand that mystery is a form of strength. When you stop explaining every detail of your life, you create a quiet aura that says, "I am confident enough in my choices that I don't need your validation." And this silence is not defensive. It's deliberate. It's the same energy that leaders, influential figures, and highly respected individuals carry naturally. They speak when necessary, but they don't fill empty space with nervous clarifications. They are selective with their words, knowing that the fewer you speak, the more impact each one has. This principle also protects you from manipulation. If you explain yourself too much, you give away the blueprint of your decision-making process. Someone with ill intentions can then use that information to influence you, guilt you, or make you question yourself. When you limit explanations, you leave less room for others to exploit your reasoning. It also spares you the emotional exhaustion of defending yourself against opinions that may never change. You could explain your choice for hours, but someone who is committed to misunderstanding you will still find a way to twist your words. Instead of fighting that uphill battle, simply stand by your decision. You don't need to announce that you're doing it without explanation. You simply embody it. And the more you practice this, the less anxious you will feel about other people's reactions. In fact, you'll discover that most people move on faster than you expect when they don't get the long justification they were hoping for. The weight you feel when you try to justify everything comes from assuming that you must make everyone else comfortable with your choices. But the moment you accept that their comfort is not your responsibility, you free yourself from that burden. Of course, there will be situations where an explanation is necessary, at work, in close relationships, or in legal matters. The power lies in knowing the difference between explaining when it is required and explaining when it is simply a habit. Many people over-explain because they fear conflict, disapproval, or the possibility of being seen in a negative light. Breaking this habit requires building tolerance for discomfort. You have to get used to someone raising an eyebrow, asking why, and you replying with a simple, because I decided so, or it works for me. At first, it will feel strange, even confrontational, but over time, you will feel the inner strength that comes with standing in your truth without needing to dress it up for others. The silence becomes your shield. This is not about being closed off. It's about choosing who gets access to your inner world. Your thoughts, reasons, and motives are valuable. Not everyone should be invited to examine them. The more you protect your reasoning, the more your actions speak for themselves. And when they do, they speak with more clarity than any explanation could. Think about the people you admire most. Often, they don't go around justifying why they do what they do. They act, they move forward, and the results of their actions speak on their behalf. They understand that energy is better spent creating results than explaining intentions. This approach cultivates respect. People may not always agree with you, but they will learn to accept that you are decisive, self-assured, and not easily swayed. It's also worth noting that over-explaining can weaken the impact of your message. Imagine you tell someone you're making a change in your life. A new job, a new relationship, a new habit. If you pile on explanations about why you're doing it, you risk turning your decision into a debate. But if you present it simply and confidently, you give it the finality of a statement rather than the uncertainty of a discussion. The difference in response is noticeable. People tend to respect firm boundaries and self-assured choices, even if they wouldn't make the same ones themselves. This is why, in many cases, less truly is more. In the end, not explaining yourself is about self-respect. It says, I trust myself enough to make this choice, and I don't need your approval to validate it. It is an act of personal sovereignty. The acknowledgement that your life is yours to live, and while others are free to have opinions, those opinions do not govern your actions. It takes practice, especially if you've spent years trying to please others. But once you begin, you'll realize how liberating it is. You'll also see how much unnecessary stress falls away when you stop giving people the ammunition they didn't need in the first place. In silence, there is strength. In mystery, there is magnetism. And in owning your decisions without explanation, there is an unshakable confidence that quietly tells the world, I know who I am, and that is enough. There will always be moments in life when you find yourself tested not by grand events, but by the slow, subtle erosion of your spirit through everyday struggles and quiet disappointments. It is in these moments, when the world does not seem to notice your effort, that your greatest power lies in the way you carry yourself and the standards you set for your own life. The ability to live with dignity, even when circumstances are unfair, is one of the most potent forms of inner strength you can cultivate. Dignity is not just a word. It is an invisible armor that protects you from being broken by the judgments, gossip, or lack of recognition from others. It is the understanding that your value is not dependent on the applause of the crowd or the validation of people who may not even understand your journey. Many lose their dignity because they believe they have to fight every battle publicly, respond to every insult, or prove themselves in the eyes of everyone watching. Yet, the most powerful individuals, those who leave lasting impressions, are often the ones who choose silence over unnecessary confrontation, grace over retaliation, and discipline over emotional outburst. Maintaining your dignity means you refuse to allow circumstances or people to drag you down to a level where you compromise your principles just to win an argument or secure temporary comfort. It is the quiet but firm decision to act in alignment with your deepest values, even when no one is there to praise you for it. True dignity shows itself when you can walk away from situations that no longer serve you without feeling the need to burn everything behind you. It shows when you can forgive, not because the other person deserves it, but because you will not let bitterness poison your soul. It is about living in such a way that you could look at yourself in the mirror every night and know that, regardless of the outcome, you did not betray your own character. This kind of strength is not always celebrated in a loud world obsessed with dominance and quick victories, but it is the kind of strength that gives you long-term peace and authority over your life. And that peace becomes your silent power. People will feel it without you having to announce it. Dignity makes you untouchable in the truest sense, because while others may try to provoke you, you have already decided they cannot dictate your reactions or your worth. This is not weakness, it is mastery. The ability to govern your own emotions and actions when the easy choice would be to lose control. It requires immense self-awareness, the humility to know not every battle is worth fighting, and the wisdom to understand that respect is earned more through your restraint than through your aggression. In the end, maintaining dignity is not about appearing flawless. It is about being able to face life's messiness without letting it strip away your self-respect. When you choose this path, you stop being just another person reacting to the chaos of life, and you become a person who shapes that chaos into meaning. You become someone who walks into any room with quiet confidence, knowing you cannot be shaken by the opinions of those who do not know your full story. And in a world full of noise, that kind of presence speaks louder than anything you could ever say.